Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Inside the NOE. My name is Jason, and always, I'm Rick. We've got someone this week that I had the pleasure of stumbling upon at one of the many fan expos that I've attended in Toronto. Nathan Salmon is a spray paint artist extraordinaire. I'm sure people who've seen his work and seen Nathan at Timmins Con in the past remember him very, very vividly.
He was a huge attraction. Like there were so many people around his booth. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was. That's the perfect word for him. He is an attraction.
He is.
The showmanship in creating his spray paint art is nothing like I've seen before. Nothing at all. So we've got a very interesting interview and conversation coming up with Nathan about how he first got started into the spray paint world. What the evolution has been, and maybe some hints of what he's got planned for Timmins Con in April of 2022.
It's going to be awesome to have him back.
That'd be very fun. Nathan's a great guy. We're looking forward to talking to him. So stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone. We have a very interesting guest with us now. Talented, uber talented,
Crazy talented.
Who would have thought that spray paint cans could create masterpieces of artwork?
I mean, I've seen spray paint used in the city of Timmins on walls and stuff, but it doesn't look like this.
That's not even close. Not even close. Yeah. We are very honored to have the spray paint artist extraordinaire with us today. Nathan, how are you doing today?
Great, and thanks for having me, guys.
It's a pleasure.
One of the most popular.
Oh my goodness.
The most popular. Like
I don't think I stopped painting the entire time I was at your guys' show.
I know every time I walk by, still going.
Yeah. Still going. Before we start grilling you with questions, I think it's important to know that we've had the pleasure of having Nathan at Timmins Con, the last show before the pandemic, correct? Okay. And I know Nate, the second.
No, I was there the last two.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So I know when you first come up, our discussion was, well, I'm not quite sure. It's a long ways. And I remember that long ways. And it's a very long, I know it's a very long ways because you traveled an extremely far distance to get.
I mean, I was coming from Nova Scotia, so.
Just a little stop along your travel, right?
Yeah.
So, I remember first seeing you in Toronto was at one of the Toronto conventions, was at Fan Expo.
Yep.
And I was there with a friend of mine, and we were walking by the numerous booths, and a buddy of mine says, "What the heck is going on in that corner?" There was just a massive crowd of people around this booth. And the first thing I thought of is, I'm not going over there because I won't be able to get through.
I remember that show too, because it's one of the few times Fan Expo put me like in the middle of an aisle, and you could not get down that aisle basically because of me.
That's right. And I believe your wife was working the booth with you, correct?
Yep. That time she was. Yeah.
Anyway, she was a champ, by the way, that weekend. She was fantastic.
She's part of what helps me survive those, like the bigger shows like that, because I can just paint solid and she can deal with the rest of it. I remember you coming up and it being a thing I could hear in the back of my mind, like, I'm gonna have to try to remember this. But I can't right now.
It's gonna feel good that you shut down a whole aisle at the.
It's not the first time.
And
usually the first time that happens, and a year after that, the con learns, okay, we're gonna put him in a more open space.
And it wasn't like an aisle, it was an aisle and an aisle. So like it was just, it was absolutely phenomenal. So we decided, well, let's go check this out. So as I approached the booth, and you're trying to make your way through the crowd, and you can kind of see over the heads, and you're scribbling. I says, what the hell is this guy doing? Like, what the hell? But once we finally got to the table and saw you at work, it is absolutely mesmerizing to watch you create these beautiful artworks out of spray cans and it was just it was mind blowing, and you just could not take your eyes off of you as you're doing your work. It's absolutely incredible.
That's the thing. It's performance art too, because like I love my work. I love the end result, but watching it be made in front of you, that's what gets people, and that's why I have a crowd the entire time I'm at a show like that. But
yeah, even people that are maybe not going to purchase anything, they want to watch because
oh yeah, yep. I have
incredible.
people who will just like that's most of where they spend the con. It's just watching me paint, and like I always have basically a full crowd there. Not everyone's going to buy. Some people just love watching me paint. But either way, it's a cool thing to add to a show like that, which is why you guys get in touch with me.
Because I remember I had bought a Sonic and a Teen Titans one.
Yep.
For my two boys.
Yep.
And after I took the pictures and sent them to my wife, and so she can show the kids, she's like, "Oh wow, that's really cool. Who did that?" I says, "Oh, it's a guy that does it with spray paint." And she went, "With what?"
Like, well, that's the thing. When you look at the paintings, they definitely don't look like they're done with brush because there's no stroke marks, nothing like that. But it's not something that most people can associate with spray paint at all, because most people think graffiti style stuff when they think that. But
yeah. It's so sharp. Like it's just like like an HD. Like it pops off the canvas.
It looks like it's done digitally is what I've been told over and over, because it is like sharp, clean, like there's no brush or like really smudge marks on it. It looks like it's a digital thing.
Yeah, just even the lines and like it's just so perfect. Yeah, it's
and even the thing that's even more impressive is the quickness in which you make these incredible pieces. I think you're around the 3-minute mark, roughly ish.
Yeah, roughly. Like some of them, like my Batman one, I can do in about a minute and a half now, and then you get some that are like, okay, that's going to take me a little longer. So average out to 3 minutes. But yeah.
Wow. Well, when did you first start using spray paint? Like, were you an artist before that with paint and brushes and?
I was a biochemist. No, my degree is in biochemistry actually, and I picked this up while I was doing my science degree. I always enjoyed art, but had no talent in it because I hadn't quite found the right thing, or I hadn't found something that kind of caught me and let me go with it far enough. Like even to this day, drawing is something I have to continuously work on, but like my drawing ability compared to my painting, not comparable at all. But I've been doing it since about 2011, I think now, and I literally just saw it done, loved it, and went home and just like needed to figure out how to do it. So I spent about 8 hours a day painting for about a month, 2 months, and then I was running out of money to buy paint. So I went to a local market where I lived and I started selling there. And luckily they sold. I just kind of snowballed. I met the right people to get into more shows and just kind of went from there and didn't stop. But
Very cool. Very cool. I know that since before the pandemic, your last appearance here, one of the questions we get is that spray paint guy coming back?
I'm glad.
They didn't know what to expect when you hear spray paint, or you might think, okay, well, maybe it's already sprayed and it's already pre-done. But when it's actually done right on site, I had a lot of people say, well, geez, if this guy's back next year, I'm definitely come back and picking something.
Well, that's the thing. It's a unique thing too, because like you can go. I know a ton of artists at other cons because I do like 50 a year before COVID, obviously. And my stuff costs about the same as what a lot of prints will. But when it's something that you can watch be made in front of you, is an original, and even if I like remake something, it's going to be a little different every time. I know it's original someone, so it catches people and people remember that.
Yeah,
I'm thinking a lot of people look at it and go, "Oh, this guy's talented." But you were saying like 8 hours a day. I'm sure you're still perfecting your art as you go. It's got to be thousands of hours.
Tens of thousands of hours at this point. Because I mean, even you guys have watched me at a con, like in any one day, like something, let's say Fan Expo, for instance, on their busiest day, I could do 250 paintings in a day. Wow. So like it's even that's time going into it, but the amount of paintings, the amount of repetition I go. So like my technique will be different from the beginning of Fan Expo to the end of it, because I've done so many things that I've to like, oh, I'm going to try this out over the weekend, and I get better at that technique by the end of it. But like I will look back at my stuff from last year, the year before that, and not recognize my style because it changes that quick, or I've added more to it. And like it's part of the reason why I very rarely keep stuff up on my own walls, because I will very quickly be like, well, I can do that better now.
Just like ever growing.
Yeah. Well, even like this stuff back here is acrylic, which I never used to do before the pandemic, and suddenly I had time. So I pushed over some of my spray paint techniques into acrylic and mix some acrylic, some spray paint because I have the time to do it here. But even that stuff is just like developing over time too.
Yeah. One thing I find cool is every piece you do is an original piece. There's not one piece that's never the same. Even though you do Batman with the same, stencils, and it's never the same. And I find that's absolutely fantastic because you can say no one else has that print that's on my wall.
Yep, which is what I kind of love about this style, that you will always get an original. And like my price points for those are generally low enough that they're always affordable because I want anyone who wants my art to be able to get my art, and I want them to be able to have an original one. I have never done a print. I don't have anything against an artist who does it, because I also know if you're putting 40 hours into a painting and you want to do prints of it, go right to town. You deserve to be able to do that. But for me, I like being able to always give people originals like that because I can.
Yeah. How long does it take you to prep the idea of, okay, as example, I know last time you were here, I wanted a Green Arrow print. And then you said, well, I'll have it ready for you tomorrow. So you went back to the motel and you had different stencils ready for the day after. So what kind of planning goes into, okay, I'm gonna have the moon at the top, I'm gonna have Green Arrow up on the mountain. Like, what is that planning process like?
So those are kind of two separate questions, because the planning, as far as if I already have a stencil for the character, plenty of the painting is like that. Because sorry, I had an alarm set. My planning is generally pretty fast because I can just. That was one of the things I had from the get-go of this, is I can keep making things up in my head, keep making images. The prep the night before is usually just if I don't have a stencil, because I can freehand characters, but it's going to be sharper and get that more crisp line if I can go home, make a stencil, cut it out, and have it ready. And then I can base a billion different paintings off of that one stencil, one silhouette, because it's just one element, and I have 100,000 different elements in my head that I can combine to make a cool individual painting. It's also why if someone asks for something really specific, it also doesn't take me that long to figure it out, because I've got all these individual elements. Like you've seen the way I do my cities, my trees, my planets, like all of that. I can mix and match that to be whatever I want. And those techniques took hundreds of thousands of hours to perfect. But once I got them, I can mix and match as I go.
Wow. Yeah.
Turn that alarm off so it doesn't go off again. One sec. That was for our original time. There we go. All right.
Do you still have the first, like, not your first one, because I'm sure the first couple you were practicing, but the first one you completed and you thought, yeah, this is, it's
so.
And what was it?
Planets. Actually, that's the thing with spray paint art. If you see anyone doing this, and it's a comment I get quite a bit, that people are impressed that like they see my stuff and it's not just planets and galaxy stuff, because that's how you learn how to do this. It teaches you to do shadowing, shading, highlighting, depth, how to make it 3D. Like doing cosmic planetary stuff is what teaches you all the techniques you need to do anything else in this. And it's usually what people do. And most times people who do this art style stick within that, which is why it's kind of what it's known for. And also why when people seem to like, oh, you do more than that. So yeah, my first stuff was planetary stuff, because it's kind of like also what grabbed my attention with it. And I don't have the first ones. I have one of the ones from like the first couple months, only because my wife kept it, because I either sold everything I had back then or burned it. And I mean, literally threw it in a fire and burned it. But it was my first year, there was so much of my stuff that I'm like, done, on fire. Because part of the thing that drew me to this was being able to do a painting. Even back then, it was 10 to 15 minutes to do a painting, and they were much simpler paintings back then. I just didn't have the muscle control, didn't have like the techniques down to do it quickly. But I liked that I could spend 10 or 15 minutes on a painting, and if I didn't like it, burn it, throw it out, go on to the next one. It wasn't, I'm dedicating 20 to 40 hours to a piece of art. And if I screwed it up at the end of that, that's a lot of time into it that just feels overwhelming. Where this is a thing that I can have a finished piece that is either good or bad within, back then, 10 to 15 minutes, now 2 to 3 minutes. But I don't burn my stuff anymore.
Back then I was like, yeah, I don't want anybody to see this one. Next.
Yep.
That's how you grow as an artist. So
yep.
That's how you go.
Isn't that a lot of pressure to put yourself under, though? 3 minutes to have a creation of that magnitude?
So there are reasons for that too, though. One thing is with spray paint, there's a drying time, especially the stuff I use now compared to when I first started. It had a longer time before it would be unworkable. But right now, if I take more than say 5 or 6 minutes on a thing, parts of that painting will dry to the point where I can't work with it. And you've seen me work where I'm pushing paint around or I'm cutting through it, stuff that it still has to be malleable. So there's a built-in time limit with spray paint that you don't have that long to work with anyway. And if you already have a time limit like that, you might as well make it faster because then it's more impressive.
Yeah. I remember when the TV crew were up and they were filming you, and I know the audio, you can, when you watch the original track, you can hear the audio, but when they show it on TV, you don't hear their audio. And I remember the cameraman saying, I cannot believe it. It was just spray paint in this corner, spray paint in that corner, swish, swash, boom. Next thing you know, you turn it around. There's these beautiful planets, and there's these trees, and there's these superhero characters. It just, like I had said, it's just very creative to see something basically come with just spray paint on a canvas, and then within 3 minutes, it's this. What's in the back of you?
Yeah, that was also a thing that I had to like get people to give it a chance for that when I started doing this, because I would contact shows, and I was lucky with you guys because you saw me at another con and knew what I could do in the first place. But when I started doing conventions, I had to contact people, be like, here, this is all my stuff, this is spray paint, it's safe, it's fine, it's not what you think. Like, I had to like sell myself so hard when I first started doing this, because you don't expect that kind of stuff to come out of spray paint, and you also expect something like, people are expecting toxic paint, people are expecting like something other than what I do, basically.
Yeah.
Well, I'm guessing now you don't, I mean, people are contacting you now, you don't really have to go and right?
Yeah, for the most, there are still a few, like, because I don't just do cons, like I do every kind of event. So there are certain ones that I am not in the same circle of, and I'll still have to do that. But these days I've got, hey, so I've done this con, this show, whatever. So I can be like, hey, they all allowed this. And most of the time it's, oh, if they did, then we will too, kind of thing. But yeah.
So now that you're how many years in? You said now you're into.
It was early 2011, so I'm basically at over a decade now.
Okay, so you've got a good solid 10 years into this type of art. I know that the craft has evolved over the years. You're saying that you went from the spray paint art into acrylics. I know I've seen some of your work where you've got glow in the dark now.
Yeah.
You got flamethrowers over top. So what's the evolution been like?
So I want to talk about the flamethrower thing, just since this is going online. If you see anyone doing this and they're using fire, 9 times out of 10, that's to get attention. There's a reason I never do it at shows. No. So I know a lot of I want to find a polite way to say this, idiots who have done this and not knowing what they were doing and just saw that, tried to copy it, and blew the can up in their hands, because that is very easy to do. I know how to do it. I shouldn't have done it when I started doing it either, but I did it in practice enough that I can do it safely. But it's not a necessary thing at all. The reason people started doing it was because it's a street art. Like, it was originally, you were a busker, you were like somewhere down south where you could just be on the street, do this whenever. And the fire would bring people in, because if you see someone doing something on the street, whatever. If you see fire, everyone goes over immediately and looks at it and wonders what you're doing. It might dry it like 30 seconds faster than if you don't use fire, but for the most part, it's just a part of the show. It's an attraction thing, and I will never do it at a live show. I've done it on a few of my videos when I've been at home, because I was doing it in the middle of winter then, I think is what those ones were. And I'm like, it is so cold in here, I'm just warming the place up doing that, because I was in a shack in the woods in the middle of February in New Brunswick. I needed to warm up. But yeah, so the fire is a thing that I did way in the beginning before I knew better, and it's a completely unnecessary technique. A lot of the development has, I mean, when I first started, I never used stencils. I didn't use stencils for the first 5 years that I did this. And I'm glad I didn't, because the biggest mistake I see new people to this art style doing is that they will use stencils right away because they see either me or someone else doing more of the comic style stuff with more character centric things. But if you have something with that sharp of an edge as a stencil and everything else in the painting is not just as sharp, it stands out like a sore thumb and it looks terrible. So I'm really glad that I started with the nature stuff, with the cosmic stuff, and got that all down packed before I started adding stencils in. And even now, like, adding the glow in the dark was a thing that, again, I can't do at shows because that paint has a very high odor to it. But it's a thing that, because of the pandemic, I was able to play around with more and do kind of at home, adding acrylics, being able to just, it's basically layering techniques on techniques. It was, when I first started out, it's just been building a base and putting on top of that.
Yeah. I remember when I first brought the idea of bringing you up to Timmins Con, after I had saw you at Fan Expo, and I presented it to the board, and they kind of went, "You want to bring a spray paint guy here?" So once then those questions, well, what about the the aerosols? They're going to stink. Is it toxic? So once I showed them your art, and I think what really did it was the videos I had took of you doing the two paintings.
Yeah.
Everyone's face just kind of went.
That's the reaction I miss right now.
Yeah, and then from that point on, it's really been a no-brainer, for us to have you back every year. So I think you've got something that's very creative, very original, and I am really looking forward to seeing what the future evolution is going to be of your work moving forward.
I'm looking forward to being back with you guys again too, and I've enjoyed. I've hated the last year and a half as much as everyone else has, and I've missed doing cons. I've missed being at live shows, partially because like I get asked to do stuff I never would think to do on my own, kind of thing. Like I get requests from stuff that I've never heard of before. But it has been good for being able to have the time to develop new techniques and like put new stuff into it. And I'm kind of excited to be back at shows again, so I can have that on top of people asking for stuff I'll never think of.
What's some of the craziest art you've ever been requested to do? Now, remember now, there will be kids watching this eventually. So remember, it's a fun family.
Yep. Okay. I mean, okay. So I've got usually a top 10 list, but the weirdest one I ever did, and I think the guy was just trying to see if he could like screw me up and make me not be able to do it. Because I do have people that will come up and ask, "Can you do this, this, and this?" And I can tell they're just trying to trip me up. I'm like, "Okay, sure, do it, money." And it turns out being great, and they end up buying it anyway. But this guy asked for a disembodied human eye floating above Roman ruins that were underwater with a prism exploding with like a rainbow coming out of it. And it looked amazing. And the guy bought it, and I know he was just trying to screw me up. And I'm like, that is the most, I hope there's reasoning to that. And you didn't just come up with like random word jargon to try to screw me up, but I did it. And after that, I think the next one was a shark fighting a narwhal. Was one of the next kind of weird ones after them. Like, and it looked good. I made the narwhal win, got a horn, works fine. After that, it's blank in space, like bullfrog in space, sheep in space. Like the amount of in space I've been asked to do, too many. And to answer this question in a still safe thing, I have been asked to do inappropriate work before, which I will never do at a live event.
So you heard that, right? So you can't request anything. So.
No, I won't. I'll wait till everybody's gone.
Okay.
No, wait, you can't tear down. I know we're tearing down. We're just waiting till everybody's gone. I got something for you to do.
Well, do you guys remember the little controversy that came up with Batman a couple years ago?
Yep.
I painted that in the bat symbol, in the bat signal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's my list. That's my not safe for work list.
Okay. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep.
So when you have your pieces on display, anyone who stands on the other side of the table will notice that you blend in very well with your creations, meaning you're full of paint from almost head to toe kind of thing. So a couple of questions. Number one, what's your cleaning bill like? Number two, do you have to go to the doctor to get that stuff scraped off? Dermatologist, do you ever see and four, what does your wife think of all of the colors in your washing machine?
So those clothes are very specific painting clothes, which are hand washed, but that paint doesn't come out of clothing. Luckily it is a water-based paint, so it doesn't adhere to my skin, and soap and water takes it off after a show. Like I get cleaned up every night after a show and it's fine. Like it doesn't hurt me, or else I wouldn't be using it. That was actually a nice thing about having a biochemistry background, that I could do my research on this paint. Like, oh, it's not toxic. It's not going to kill me eventually. It's fine to use indoors, everything. But yeah, get that question quite a bit.
Well, it's true. It's poor, I feel bad for the guy, people don't have any sympathy. It's just more pictures, spray. the guy can stand in the back with the paintings and just kind of do a pose, and you wouldn't even see him
You
there.
wouldn't see.
See, the nice thing is when I do outdoor shows, those clothes are waterproof because there's so many layers of paint on them.
Awesome.
So Nathan, seeing that you're going to be back up here again in April, we're really, really excited for that. I know that you and I have talked. We've got a very special guest coming up next year, Daniel Cudmore, who played the stuntman for Master Chief and Halo Forward Unto Dawn. So can we see possibly something, a new creation, con exclusive for a Master Chief print, do you think?
Oh yeah, I can definitely come up with something for that.
Very cool. That'd be very cool. Well, I think, Nathan, we won't take no more of your time. Listen, I wanted to, again, thank you so much for doing this. It's always a pleasure talking to you. I'm a big fan of your work. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I have 4 or 5 of them downstairs myself. There's a few in my kids' rooms. And it's up there with pride because I see the amount of work and the pride that you take in your craft. So it's very, very professional. And again, as always, you're always welcome back to Timmins, and we look forward to seeing you back in April.
I appreciate that. I'll be glad to be back, guys.
Perfect. All right. Again, Nathan, thanks for your time, and we'll be back right after these messages.
Hot summer streets and the pavements are burning. I sit around, trying to smile, but the air is so heavy and dry. It's a cruel, cruel summer. My friends are away and I'm on my own. It's too hard to handle, so I got to get up and go.
Oh, this is so exciting! Are you watching this?
Just think of me.
It's a cruel, cruel summer.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Welcome back, everyone. So as we promised, very interesting and informative discussion with Nathan.
Yeah, and like we were talking about with him, like I can't imagine the amount of work that went into becoming so. I mean, he's talented, of course, but all that work he had to do to be where he's at is unbelievable. So yeah, when you look at his artwork, you're like, a lot of people don't realize the thousands and thousands of hours of work to get that good. Like, and it's just I like we said in the interview, it's HD. Like you look at it and you're like, whoa, it's popping right off the canvas there.
Yeah, and when you watch him do his work and you see spray paint bottles and the top of the screw cap of a Gatorade bottle and a flat plate, and you're thinking to yourself, I just paid $20 for this.
You know, but he's like,
and then he flips it around, and you just kind of go, what? Here's my $20. And do you also do this? You'll see that a lot. As soon as that first one is done, people are taking in their wallets for their second print. So it's always a pleasure talking to Nathan. We're really looking forward to having him back for Timmins Con in April of 2022. So on behalf of Rick, I'm Jason. Thanks again for watching. Once again, please vaccinations. We have to get back to normal, or else I'm going to lose my mind.
Me too. I want normal. I want to go to the con, and I want to go to the movies more, and I want to do all that stuff. And
That's right. Absolutely. So again, thank you for watching. We appreciate your support, and we'll look forward to the next episode of Inside the NOE. Thank you.